Funding for the production of Public Square provided by the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, working to improve the lives of vulnerable children.
My children in elementary school were getting rewarded with candy, and all the school parties, the focus was on cakes and cupcakes, and that's the norm.
There are APS schools that are pushing 40% of kids that are obese, and that's not even including kids that are overweight.
We have little children that are on high blood pressure medications, and that is just not right.
In San Felipe, we built a soccer field and a community park with a walking trail. It was the first recreational facility in that pueblo's history.
What we've lost, I think, is really valuing food, knowing where food comes from.
Families don't cook. I mean, most families just don't cook at all anymore.
You know, at the end of the day, none of these people can afford healthy food.
Somehow we should be able to get across the point that a bag of black beans that would serve a whole meal for $1.30 is more economical than the $1 a piece dollar menu items at a fast food store.
The risk is far greater for Native Americans, for Hispanics, for African American kids, and we are letting those kids down if we don't make the policy changes.
It took us a long time to get here. It's going to take us a long time to reverse the trend.
Welcome to Public Square, where civic dialogue takes center stage, where real people come together with leaders to discuss and help solve important community issues.
Imagine if you have a kindergartner who is obese, what are their chances of reversing that? And then what's incredibly scary is at third grade, they almost double it. We're seeing 22% of third graders who are obese.
Today we'll be talking about something that is a worry in every community, how heavy our kids are getting. In New Mexico, we are facing an epidemic of childhood obesity. So today we've invited a group of people who have experience with this issue. They are educators, parents, healthcare workers, cooking teachers, and advocates. After we talk to them for a while about the nature of this problem, we'll bring in State Senator Cisco McSorley, State Representative James Smith, and Patty Morris from the New Mexico Department of Health, and we'll talk about solutions. But before we get started, here's a little bit more about our topic.
I put my salsa on top. Don't be afraid to try it.
This looks gross, but it tastes good.
Childhood obesity has more than tripled over the last 30 years, and studies show the problem takes root in elementary school, where childhood obesity rates rise steeply. For example, in New Mexico, 13% of incoming kindergartners, 25% of Native American kindergartners, and 22% of third graders are obese. And young people who are very overweight or obese often develop health problems that we used to only see among adults, like heart disease, diabetes, cancer, and arthritis. Experts say there are several things young people should do. Eat smaller portions, get more exercise, limit time with TV and computers, have fewer sugary drinks, and eat more fruits and vegetables.
I'm Miss Kathy. We've met before. Today we have a little menu here for you. Look at the front of your book. It says black bean tostadas with salsa fresca. That's what we're cooking today.
Every parent knows that getting kids to eat more fruits and vegetables can feel like an impossible task.
What is this? A tomato.
But one program in Santa Fe is finding success in getting kids to cook and eat healthy food. At Chaparral Elementary, second graders in the Cooking with Kids program are learning skills that their parents and teachers hope will last a lifetime.
It starts with the C, cilantro.
This cooking lesson is full of second grade curriculum. They're learning how to read the recipe. They're doing math with the measurement. Right now they're doing some geography, learning about where the food is from, and even some history of how the food came to the United States. They're having so much fun and it's so hands-on that they're not realizing that it's a learning experience for them, but it is.
Can you use the spoon to pull those down into the pan? Good work. Oh, those are going to be yummy.
They're learning things that won't be on any standardized tests, but their teacher, Kelly Griego, says they're picking up valuable life skills.
Healthy weight is something that I worry about. It's important for them to recognize the difference between healthy food and non-healthy food because they're building those habits now. They'll build upon it as they grow older and make healthy choices throughout their life. Okay, just toss it. Don't get your hand near the hot. All shapes and sizes. Beautiful tortillas. The healthy food isn't always appealing to them because it doesn't come with all those bells and whistles. They're drawn into the packaging, the characters on the boxes, the toys that are sometimes included. The healthy foods aren't always packaged in that manner. They're packaged by nature.
Over time, the cooking classes make a change in the kids' behavior.
In my classroom, they're starting to notice when a snack is healthy, when it's not healthy. They're beginning to tell me instead of me telling them.
Ray Suarez came to volunteer for cooking class, hoping his grandson will learn some habits that will keep him healthy as he grows older.
The reason I'm here is because of my grandson, and I love it. Me, I'm diabetic, so I don't eat out because all the foods out in the restaurants are all processed foods. So I do a lot of cooking even now that I'm retired, and anything you cook at home is a lot better than it is at the restaurants. And if they learn that, well, like you said, obesity would be down. They do their own cooking, it's better food all around.
In the United States, we would say dinner is served. In Mexico, they would say, la cena está servida. Let's say that. La cena está servida. Now guess what? You may taste the food you've worked so hard to make.
It was like really all the things that describe delicious combined.
Okay, great.
We've lost the ability to take care of ourselves.
Our priorities have shifted, and we don't see the value of time together as a family, time together being active, that our health should be a priority and come up here above work and other chores and things that we do.
Over a generation, our families have changed how they eat and communities have, and so we see that as the normal.
Right now, about 30% of kids in Albuquerque are obese, so it's not something unusual that we see. And these kids have issues with self-esteem, they have trouble with school, they're at much higher risk for being picked on and bullied at school, and that's just, it's heartbreaking to see.
We do what we were taught, and if our parents weren't taught how to eat well, how to be active, how to turn off the TV, that type of thing, then we do what they did.
Here's what I fear. I fear instead of having people on dialysis when they're in their 60s or 70s, we're going to start having people on dialysis from obesity when they're in their 30s.
So we're now looking at losing a lot of our young leaders in their prime, and those are the ones that keep our language and our traditions alive. So we're really, truly talking about the survival of American Indian nations.
There is a huge connection between poverty and obesity. What we find is families buying a bag of potatoes that will last them 2 or 3 days, and their main meal is fried potatoes. Although people are often confused about why poor people are obese, there are really strong, very logical connections.
When I tell my kids that doctors used to smoke in their exam rooms, they don't believe me. I want the kindergartners of tomorrow to be completely disbelieving that there was ever soda or pizza at school.
If you're looking to save money and prevent health consequences, preventing this is really the best way to do that. And it starts with kids. I mean, that's really the easiest way.
I want to start with you, Carolyn. You've been seeing patients, little patients, for 30 years now, so you've got a nice perspective on this issue. Tell us what has changed in your practice over 30 years.
Well, I will tell you that the biggest surprise to me when I went into pediatrics is that I started seeing children and treating them for high blood pressure. And so there are many reasons that children can have high blood pressure, but what I was encountering was children who were having high blood pressure not because of some disastrous kidney disease, but simply because they were obese. So you have little children that are on high blood pressure medications, and that is just not right.
I grew up in the 70s, so early 70s, mid 70s, we were doing like 20-some pull-ups on the physical fitness tests. And when I was doing my cooperating teaching, I did Ernie Pyle Middle School, Barcelona Elementary, Cleveland Middle School, Harrison Middle School, and 6 to 8 was like the stud in class. And it's funny, but it's not, because this is 1991 when that occurred. So imagine what it is now. I'm afraid to even know.
I'm currently working on a garden project at Barcelona Elementary, and we selected that school because it has one of the highest rates of childhood obesity among APS schools. And there are APS schools that are pushing 40% of kids that are obese, and that's not even including kids that are overweight. It really limits their mobility and an ability to participate in kind of fun daily things.
But are the vending machines still there?
I don't know if the vending machines are still there. It's a very good question.
Actually, they better not be.
I haven't seen any.
Well, their vending machines are there. They're,
right, limited.
They're limited. They're supposedly to when they can access the machines and what's actually in the machines. But I could say probably that there are plenty of schools that still have pretty high fat, pretty high sugar content in the vending machines, and I'm a parent of 2 APS children, and my children in elementary school were getting rewarded with candy, and all the school parties, the focus was on cakes and cupcakes, and that's the norm. The exception are the fruits and the vegetables, and I'd really like to reverse that. But implementing that is very difficult. People do not want you taking their cupcakes away.
You know, we had Governor Richardson pushed through a very aggressive policy for school in foods in schools. How's that going? What are you guys seeing?
Well, and that got passed in 2006, and New Mexico was the second state in the nation to actually pass that, and some of us here in this room actually worked on that. And it was to actually curtail what we see in the vending machines and try and find some healthier options, as well as actually it was supposed to curtail some of the cupcakes as well. What's interesting is that was 2006. 4 years later, child nutrition reauthorization at the federal level really ramped that up. That was a year ago. So we'll have higher nutrition standards, but there was a pushback by Congress who actually made those rules. And so we'll see how it all comes out. But the pushback came by lobbyists who are focused on the potatoes that were on the plate, the French fries, and the pizza, and hoping that what ended up on the pizza would be considered a vegetable. So the good news is that we're seeing more fresh fruits and vegetables. It's supposed to put more fresh fruits and vegetables on those plates. And we're doing a lot of that here in New Mexico, even with New Mexico grown produce. So
you can't package fruit and let it stay in a machine. The shelf life of fresh fruits and veggies is just not there as compared to those kind of packages. The other thing, it takes time to adjust your taste buds. Give it 3 weeks trying something. Kids are used to eating the vending machines, and so the fresh fruits and vegetables don't have the taste appeal initially. They haven't tried it long enough for them to choose those first.
Do apples not come in flaming hot?
I'm telling you, Flamin' Hot Cheetos is like the state.
It is a staple to see. There was a wonderful article I once read by a pediatrician in California, and the title of the article was No Come Nada, and that means you don't eat anything. And it's because you would get parents that would come in and they say, my child isn't eating, no come nada, no come nada. And what they were saying that at the same time that the child had the hot Cheetos and the soda. And what they were saying is, if I don't give them that, they won't eat anything. It takes time for kids to like a new food. It's not just, well, he won't eat it, but you have to keep trying with them, keep working with them, and remove the ones so that they're not filling up.
Well, I think it's so much about, it's an access issue, because hot Cheetos are rampant through Native American communities as a major food source. My daughter happens to love them. But really, when we look at the average tribal community here in the state of New Mexico, it's a food desert. And so it's, you're the only food source on the reservation is typically going to be a convenience store. but also looking at the issue of economics around healthy food as well, and that it becomes very easy when you need to feed your family or to feed your child to look and go spend 99 cents on a bag of hot Cheetos or a pop in order to provide some kind of nutrition. And I think we look at that issue of food access and really looking at the fact that I think unhealthy eating habits are being institutionalized in our schools, despite what legislation is really going on. So that now here in New Mexico, at least 51% of all Pueblo children are overweight or obese. And many of them are getting a big source of their calories at schools.
And that's part of the concern I think that all of us have in this group is certainly the rates of obesity in all of New Mexico and APS system, but for minority children, Crystal is absolutely right. The risk is far greater for Native Americans, far greater for Hispanics, far greater for African American kids, and we are letting those kids down if we don't make the policy changes and the changes that need to be made so that these kids aren't getting those secondary health effects.
Well, and to really, and with regard to Native American children, statistics now say that 1 out of 2 children born after the year 2000 will develop type 2 diabetes. And in terms of African American and also Hispanic, those populations are right there. And so we have a huge epidemic on our hands that's, children as young as 4 now are being diagnosed with type 2. And really looking at overall, the World Health Organization came out with a study saying that emerging nations, which tribal nations would fall under, by 2025 will be spending at least 40% of their annual budgets on diabetes care. And here in the United States, they're predicting by 2025 that the United States government will spend probably over 20% of its annual budget. So whether you look at the economics or as we look at as parents, for Native Americans, it's really about the survival of our communities. This is an issue that we all need to come together, and that's why this is such an interesting forum.
It's also a health justice issue, and I think your organization really speaks to that.
Well, what we found, it's really an economic justice issue. I was saying earlier that we're doing our second short film on hunger, basically, and this is on summer food, and so we went out to Gallup, and what we saw were people who had full-time jobs. One woman worked at Applebee's full-time, and they have a real problem putting healthy food on their plate. Another family, the mother worked at Walmart full-time for 16 years in the finance department, lived in a trailer, her kids did summer food, they were poor enough to be participating in summer food, and there is at the end of the day, none of these people can afford healthy food. And even the gas to get, when you're on the reservation, the gas to go buy the groceries, you look back to all of it, it's a lot of just economic justice issues and making sure people are paid a livable wage so that they can go buy fresh fruits and vegetables instead of that bag of potatoes that they fry up and eat for 3 days.
I want to jump in and go back to the trying to get kids to eat something besides a Flamin' Hot Cheeto.
Yep. I think it starts with what the mother can eat during her pregnancy. There are studies that show that it does affect the taste buds of the child, and what you offer your child to begin with, considering if you have the option to offer fruits and vegetables.
I think there's probably a lot of parents at home who are going, no freaking way. The kid will not eat kale. No way. But Lynn, we have with us an expert, a magician who has actually witnessed children eating kale. How does this work?
If children prepare food of all different kinds, and then if they have the choice to eat it, they are much more likely to do so. Because food can be one of those few issues, really, or realms where children have power. They can say, I'm only eating Flamin' Hot Cheetos. Right. But if they actually prepare it, what I've seen is, for the most part, children after once or twice will really be interested in eating it.
Is that what we have kind of stopped doing, is having kids help in the kitchen? Does that make a big difference?
I think it really does make a big difference. And we're now almost at the second generation of mothers primarily, but adults, fathers too, for the most part not cooking. What we've lost, I think, is really valuing food, knowing where food comes from, having the experience of having a garden. Not that everyone is going to be a farmer, but having that excitement of planting something and pulling a carrot out of the ground or digging for potatoes. You know, it's really, really fun. And cooking is the same kind of thing. We're almost at the place where we think if it's fun, it's not good.
Families don't cook. I mean, most families just don't cook at all anymore. And it is, you completely lose that investment in what food is. I don't think kids can recognize food. You can go into most supermarkets, whether it's Walmart or local supermarkets, and the entire middle section of the supermarket, there's nothing recognizable as food. It's pre-made packaging.
I was going to ask you, does getting them invested in growing the food and seeing it growing, does that make them more willing to try something like a beet?
Oh, I mean, I've seen third graders argue over who gets to try the broccoli, and that doesn't happen in a kitchen. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't happen in a grocery store for sure. They're not reaching for the fresh vegetables, and I think it's just sort of human nature. If you're invested in something and work towards growing something or producing something, I mean, you want to benefit from your work.
I think there's also a potential in the grocery store. In our program, we actually have a grocery store tour, and we take the kids. And when one family came back and talked to us, their 10 and 12-year-old were going to them, and they were pulling down, reading the label, and said, "No, Mom, we can't get this." So I value the growing in the garden, and I think that's great. But let's not forget to take our kids to the grocery store, know how to read labels, and get them invested in what goes into the shopping cart to begin with. Because
and the planning as well, because it's great when you say I've been a working mother all my life, and I can tell you that when I have to work late and get home, and it's a lot easier to reach for that prepackaged, add the meat, and you're good to go, instead of trying to plan out, boy, I'm getting home late. We were just talking about this. You were just talking about your daughter, and you've got to feed your daughter tonight, so you're thinking, what am I going to feed her? And so having that preparation, the same thing for lunches, when you pack lunches with kids, is having them involved, preparing it, thinking ahead of the week. What can I do to get things ready maybe on the weekend so that I'm not reaching for that prepackaged food at the last minute
anymore? You mean plan, do a menu?
I love to see victory gardens come back, where every family had a small or a community garden.
Not every family is going to be able to have a garden, and I mean, there certainly are time constraints, but a lot of it, I think, is exposing kids at an early age. So they're used to it. They know what a vegetable is, where it comes from. Yeah. And no, that's a big problem. Yeah. And I do also want to make the point, it's not entirely accidental that we find ourselves in this situation. I mean, the government subsidizes, corn and soybeans to an enormous degree in this country, and we end up with a glut of grains that we need to figure out something to do. So you get a lot of cheap meat and high fructose corn syrup, and both of those are associated with obesity. So some of this, there's a farm bill coming up for renegotiation in Congress this coming year. I mean, that's billions of dollars. And it's a big issue, but if you can change the structure of subsidies in this country, I think you're going to get less of the stuff that makes people unhealthy and more of the stuff that you want people eating.
I think Nate's right. We're seeing the shift already in the Farm Bill. For us in New Mexico, we're really lucky because actually we don't have too many of the commodity programs, but they're little gems. There's one that came out of the recent Child Nutrition Reauthorization Act called Farm to School, and it will provide for things like putting in a garden and doing, like Lynn's doing, nutrition education, which just makes all the sense in the world to put all those pieces together. So you're right, Nate. I mean, we are on a great turn now, and so I think this is a real time for us to continue to be focused on food as an issue and on obesity as the challenge, but I think we have every opportunity to make change happen.
Let's talk about something that's not changing very fast, the actual school lunch. Who has seen a school lunch recently?
It is a really interesting issue because on one hand, we have all these kids who are relying on school meals more than ever. Iowa State University just came out with this very interesting, rigorous study that showed that if you look at children eligible for free meals, the children that got school meals had healthier indicators in terms of obesity than the children who also eligible for free meals brought their own meals, which makes sense because probably what those kids are bringing are chips and soda, and despite the mystery meat aspect of some of the lunches, it actually is somewhat balanced. It did provide something. You get a lot of pushback that I'm sure you know, Pam has dealt with when you're trying to kind of promote a healthier meal from the student nutrition directors. We really love these kids, but A, they are worried that if you serve something healthier, the kids won't eat it and they will lose their money, and it goes in the garbage. And B, that they have this very limited budget within which they have to produce their meal.
Should we expect that schools could do some of these same strategies that we're telling ourselves we have to do? You know, introduce the kale, allow them to choose.
So Revolution Foods, which is a business, had come and went to many different states, and I think they tried to come here, and I think it hasn't worked out. But and they do these taste tests. They try and get them to do these food taste tests, and eventually the kids actually eat it. I mean, the problem is they've never really been able to get down within the school lunch budget, the reimbursement budget, to produce the same thing, and that is really ultimately the one of the problems.
We all want to jump on that poor school lunch, but I don't think that the people that are involved in making it, these people care. These people have kids. Their kids go to these schools. They're from the community, and that is a big mistake when we don't involve the community, and we don't go to the people that work in that community and say, how can we work with you to make this better? Because it's not like they're trying. They're not trying, and they're invested. They're invested. They have limited resources.
School meals are really a perfect reflection of our food system. We have $2.70 for reimbursement for a full, you know, free lunch, and that's it. Now, if you're a magician, you could do something fabulous with that. But given our food system, it's kind of, there are many impediments. We've done a lot of work with school meals, and actually our recipes that children cook in the classroom and take home are also designed for school meals and served in Santa Fe Public Schools several times a month. But it is a systemic social value issue, and it is also a food justice issue. It really is, and I don't think we can ignore that. I have this kind of dream that if we valued these people who are cooking for our children every day as we value chefs, what could be accomplished?
That's what I'm talking about. That's what I absolutely agree. And that's just not
I don't know how many people are really saying that, though. I mean, I think that's part of it is, I think it's a small group of people that are being advocates around what's going on with school lunches or different things, but really what I think the revolution where it's going to start is around that dinner table. And it's really about education, because I think there's a lot of wonderful people out there providing those meals that just don't know better. And we see it constantly with parents, like they don't understand that, you know, handing the pop over to their 3-year-old, you know, or handing the bag of hot Cheetos over is a bad thing. I mean, these are snacks, and there's nothing malicious there, but I think it's really around education, around parents. I think there's more education in schools that needs to go on with teachers, because, for example, at my daughter's school at testing last year, every child received breakfast as the incentive for testing, and they gave them a donut, sausage and scrambled eggs, and a big old glass of juice before they went in for testing. And I'm like, you know, I mean, so I think I don't think there's anything, I don't think they did that with intention to do something bad. I just think that we have a lot of education to do, and that we need to also, I think as parents sometimes need to stop whining around that, oh, we're being victimized by various systems. We really have a choice about what we are choosing to feed our children with, to some extent. And now, you know, we do have our communities that have less options because of the whole issue around economics, around access to healthy foods. But, you know, still, if we have some basic education in place, I think that we can also help to make better choices for our children.
All right. As a group, let's brainstorm a small handful of things that you think have to be changed right away.
I think access, you know, equitable access is really important, so people do have choices. And I agree about education as well.
Somehow we should be able to get across the point that a bag of black beans that would serve a whole meal for $1.30 is more economical than the $1 a piece menu items at a fast food store.
We have 11 school districts that are purchasing New Mexico grown fresh fruits and vegetables. And that's about $500,000 of sales right now to farmers. And so we are getting local produce on the tables, and much of it is about changing how we do things. And that's been a change that we've been working on for 10 years. So it's exciting to see new things happening.
A continuing theme that I hear from all of this discussion is really a partnership. I don't think that there is one absolute magic bullet that's going to solve the problem.
Off the top of my head, as far as for school systems, a minimum amount of recess time, for sure. There are some there is a PED level that says 30 minutes a day, but I think that nobody's really following that. I know there's a elementary school in APS, their kindergartners do not get recess till after 1 in the afternoon. So I think just some really basic, more physical activity at school, brain breaks, more fruits and vegetables at school, so move more, eat more fruits and vegetables, have access to water at schools. Also, my kids brought lunch, but they wanted to buy milk, but they didn't want to stand in the line to get milk. They couldn't. They didn't make a separate milk line. So I think, there's some very fundamental things that can happen quickly within schools that will bring up the health of the school.
Show that you value healthy food by paying for it. And I talked a little bit about government subsidies, but in the long run, the costs associated with a poor diet are much higher than the upfront costs of paying for healthy food.
They just don't see it because it's
not
not in the immediate.
You don't see it.
A lot of this is about an honest economic discussion about what, it's like with the competitive foods in schools. Well, if you want your cheerleaders to be able to sell pizza and brownies on Fridays, that takes this much money away from the school food service. The French fries now this is what it's costing us later. I mean, it is a matter of economics, a lot of it. I mean, at Appleseed we call it doing the right thing for the wrong reasons. A lot of times it's about finding the right, even if it's the wrong reason, an economic reason to do the right thing.
Right. Preventative medicine was around in the 70s, and we're still trying to, get people to buy into it. I mean, what do we not get about that?
Let's take a little break now and come back and talk about solutions.
Jim Smith.
Magic Garrison.